Hey there everyone, thank you so much for being here, thank you so much for watching. This video is completely inspired by you guys. So many of you have contacted me asking how to make the switch to pfSense. You heard about it, you're intrigued by it, you're a fairly technical person, so you want to know how to properly make the switch. Now, there are tons of guides out there and I encourage you to watch as many of them as you can to get a more complete feel of what the process will look like for you. But before I start to talk about what you need and how to do it, I want to spend just a minute on you guys that may be not yet convinced if you should or shouldn't make the switch. Now, of course, that's completely up to you, but you should take into consideration some of the facts. I'm going to just outline several of them. The first one, if you're using an off-the-shelf kind of device, or moreover, if you're using a device that was given to you by your ISP, you're using a device manufactured by a company that is mainly a financial company wanting to make money. So you can bet your behind they will use the cheapest, most bare minimum kind of components they can in order to sell the device in the most competitive price they can. Moreover, they don't want their developers' time be spent on servicing devices that have already been sold. They want their developers to focus on devices that are upcoming, that might bring in money. Servicing existing devices has no money in it, so if you get 1 year or 2 years, tops 3 years of patches, you should be thankful. So these are just some of the many considerations that you should take into account. Now, what do you need in order to install pfSense? You can install pfSense on an old desktop lying around the house. In fact, if you install pfSense on a computer that is 10 years old, you will still get a firewall 100 times more robust than any off-the-shelf device you can find today. But you will need to spend just a few dollars on eBay to buy an additional network card, slot it in, install pfSense, you're golden. If you don't have an old desktop lying around the house, you can use one of these devices. You can find them on AliExpress. These are mini PCs with 4 network ports. Now, don't be fooled by the looks. This is a computer. This is an i3, 8 gigs of RAM computer. I can connect to a monitor with an HDMI port, connect a mouse and keyboard with the USB ports, and I can install Windows 11 on it, use it as my personal computer. But because it has 4 network ports, it's more suited or more geared to running pfSense or any other open source firewall. So just get a thumb drive into the USB ports, install pfSense on it, you're golden. One other thing that you might want to use is a switch. Now, you can use a dumb switch like I have here today. You don't need a managed switch. Just because pfSense supports VLANs doesn't mean you have to use them. But I do think that you should get one of these because you might want to connect several devices hardwired into the network. As for Wi-Fi, whatever you're running your Wi-Fi today, if it's an off-the-shelf device or your ISP device, you can repurpose that and stop using it as a router and start using it as a wireless access point, and this is exactly what we're going to do in the video today. So let's get started. Alright guys, so we're at the computer and we're actually getting ready to jump on this pfSense wagon. Now, if you already have the hardware available to you, we can start with the installation process. But before we jump into the actual work, I just want to outline in a general sense what are we going to do. We're going to take your ISP device, if it's a modem or a combo device that's also a modem and a wireless router. By the way, if it is, make sure to get on a call with your ISP and get them to assist you in turning this device into bridge mode, which will actually make it modem only. We want the pfSense to do all the routing, all the hard work. We need your ISP device to only connect you to their data centers and to the internet. So once that's done, we connect a cable from the modem to one of the ports on the computer you're installing pfSense on. Another cable you'll connect to a different port and to a switch. It can be a dumb switch, you don't need a managed switch. Just because you're running pfSense doesn't mean you need to use VLANs and all other stuff. pfSense works fine with a flat 24-bit subnet. So make sure you have a switch. I will assume you will want to connect more than one device, so make sure to get a switch. And from the switch we'll connect one cable to our computer, which we will be working on, and another cable to a leftover wireless router we will use as an access point. Alright, before you jump into the work, make a note of your current network. For example, what's your subnet? If it's 192.168.1. something or .0 something, maybe you'll want to recreate that. Knowing the name of your computer and the IP address always comes in handy, especially if in your use case you want to do some port forwarding, which I must say I am against using port forwarding at all. But if you do want to port forward, make sure to take a note of what ports are you currently forwarding and to where. So we will know to recreate it when pfSense is up and running. If you have a Wi-Fi network currently and you want to use the same Wi-Fi network name and password, take note of that, just so you won't forget. And another important step, just before starting the installation process, set a static IP to your computer, because in the installation process you won't have any DHCP server to hand you an address. Make sure to set a static one. Alright, that's enough talking, so let's get to work. What we will need in order to get the installation working is the pfSense ISO file and a USB thumb drive, which I assume is not very hard to find. So open up a web browser, go into Google, type pfSense download, it will take you right here. Architecture, select AMD 64, installer, DVD image, ISO, and select the closest server to you and click on download. Of course, I've already downloaded this file. Next, we will need an application to take this ISO file and in a sense burn it into your USB thumb drive so it will be bootable. So again, go back to Google, type Rufus. The first result will take you here. Scroll down a little bit and click on download. Of course, I've already downloaded it. Once you're done, go into your downloads folder and you'll see that pfSense is being downloaded not as an ISO file but as a .gz file. So a program like 7-zip can make short work of that. So let's use 7-zip to extract the files, and in a second we're done. At this point, plug your USB thumb drive into your computer and launch Rufus. Your USB thumb drive should be appearing right here. Of course, I don't have a USB thumb drive connected, so nothing is showing up. And click on select to actually select the pfSense ISO file, which we have just extracted. Just click on OK. Click on start. It will take maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and at the end of the process you'll have a bootable USB drive. At this point, go ahead and set a static IP to your computer. I've already done it. Just select the network interface, select properties, double click on Internet Protocol version 4, and select an address that is in the 192.168.1. something, and select the subnet mask, default gateway, and the DNS server, so that we will be able to test if we have internet connectivity. Alright, at this point, take the USB thumb drive, plug it into the computer you want to install pfSense on, and power it on, and make sure you know how to boot into USB. I will be following along with a virtual machine so that I can screen record it, but the installation process will be exactly the same, and you will be surprised how easy it is to install pfSense. It will be just a matter of clicking or hitting the enter key a bunch of times. Okay, this is the pfSense installation. Once it's starting, you don't need to click on anything or select anything. It's just loading its own bootloader. Alright, this is the installation process or the installation wizard. You will see that this installation is just clicking enter just a bunch of time. Starting right now, accept, click on enter, install, click on enter, continue, click on enter, AutoZFS, click on enter, install, click on enter. Again, we don't need to do any RAID or something, Stripe is fine. Click on enter, select the hard drive you want to install on if you have more than one, and click enter. And now switch from no to yes, click enter. Of course, pfSense will wipe the hard drive completely, so if you had any information on it, it will be lost. Be aware of that. The installation is starting. It will take maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I will pause the recording and resume it once it's done. Alright, the installation is finished. It's now asking if you want to open the shell to do something. Of course, we don't. So we'll select enter, we'll click on enter on no and enter to reboot. The installation process is over. pfSense will now reboot, and I will of course speed up the recording, and I will meet you once this boot up is finished. Alright guys, so the boot up is finished, and what pfSense is asking us now is of course which interface or which network port is connected to your ISP and which one is connected to your LAN. Now it identifies the interfaces right here with the name VMX0 or VMX1. No one should make sense out of this. The numbers right here are their MAC addresses. There's no reason you should know it. By the way, I've done this process a few times, so I already know what's what. But there's no chance you can guess which one is which. Sadly, you will just have to try and retry if it doesn't work. So let's start the process, and I will even show you how to start over if you got it wrong. By the way, if you got it wrong, you will start over and then you'll know how to do it right. Alright, so the first question it asks us, do we want to set up VLANs now? Some ISPs do require VLANs, but we don't, so just click on N. Now, for the WAN interface, I already know what's mine, so I'm going to select VMX1, and for LAN, VMX0, and click on enter. Do you want to proceed? Click on yes. And now it's going to configure each device with its own role, the LAN for LAN and WAN for WAN. And when this configuration process will finish, we will see that I get my ISP connection with DHCP and not with PPPoE, so I will already see my IPv4 internet address. Alright, so as you can see guys, I do have an IPv4 address, meaning I already have internet connection, and if I somehow got the interfaces wrong, I will not see my ISP internet address. And even if I try to ping, just a simple ping to 192.168.1.1, now it works, but if you got the interfaces wrong, you will not get a ping reply. So at this point, what you can do, if you see this menu right here, if you click on 2, you will get this wizard restarted. Now you know that your LAN is this and not that. By the way, you might get interface names other than VMX something. It doesn't matter, the name doesn't matter, it's just the assignment that matters. But this is my recommendation. Sometimes I've seen that clicking on option number 2 and restarting the configuration wizard, sometimes you select VMX1 or VMX0 and click enter, and then pfSense gets stuck. Sometimes. So what I recommend that you do at this point, if you want to restart the process, just click on 4, reset factory default. At this point we have achieved nothing, so there's nothing really to be lost. Click on 4, reset factory defaults, and start the process all over again. This time where you've selected VMX1, select VMX0. Alright, once we've achieved the process where we got the interfaces right, select option 2 to set an IP address, even though it already has one, 192.168.1.1. Click on option 2, click on again on 2 for LAN. Now we set the IP address of the LAN interface to 192.168.1.1. The reason that I recommended you do this process, even though the address is already configured, is next you will see why. 24-bit subnet mask. Click on enter here, and this is why. Do you want to enable DHCP server? At this point, it will be very helpful to some of you, I think, to already have DHCP up and running. So click on yes. The first address will be 192.168.1.100. The last address will be 192.168.1.200. Do you want to revert to the HTTP? Actually, there's no need to, so click on no. Alright, and now we're ready. The LAN IP address was 192.168.1.1. We have quotes changed it to 192.168.1.1, but we've already also in the process enabled the DHCP. So what we can do right now in order to make sure that everything is in order, go to your computer network interface, and from static IP address, obtain IP address automatically. At this point, your computer should be getting a DHCP address from pfSense. And let's see. Indeed, we got 192.168.1.100. That's great. Just for good measure, let's ping 192.168.1.1 and we indeed get a reply. So at this point, we can already launch pfSense web interface at 192.168.1.1. If you get this prompt, just click advanced and continue. Default username is admin. Default password is pfSense. And let's start the initial configuration wizard. Click on next, click on next. Hostname doesn't really matter. Select your preferred DNS servers, and if you don't want your ISP to override them, just uncheck this. Click on next, select your time zone. I'm going to go with Sydney just randomly. This is where you'll configure your ISP settings. I'm using DHCP, that's my configuration. If you're using, for example, PPPoE, this will be where you select it, scroll down, and this will be where you will need to provide your PPPoE username and password. Again, I'm keeping mine as DHCP because it really is. Click on next, click on next. Admin password, you must change the default password, it won't let you continue with it. Click on next, reload, wait for a minute or two, and click on finish. And accept. Guys, we are now approximately minus edits 19 minutes into the process from start to a point where we already have pfSense already installed. That's how fast and easy it was. That's it, pfSense is running. What we need to do right now, let's go back to our drawing board. We have our network with the same subnet, that's great. We know our computer got 192.168.1.100 if we want to assign a static IP address in pfSense. We have port forwarding to go over and Wi-Fi. Let's check one step at a time. Let's go into status and DHCP leases. We see our computer got a .100 address, and let's say we want our computer to have a static IP address. Maybe we want to port forward some service into it. Let's click on the plus button right here. And we'll need to assign an IP address that is outside of the range. From outside between, it will need to be lower than 100 or higher than 200. So for example, let's select 192.168.1.10 for example. Click on save. That's interesting. Sometimes you'll get this error message because the DHCP service has restarted and the configuration didn't take. Let's go into services, DHCP server. You see, from 100 it changed to 10 and this should be 200. It happens sometimes. Let's click on save. And now let's go back to DHCP leases. Let's go back to the plus button. And again, 192.168.1.90. I'm glad we bumped into this because sometimes it happens. Click on save and now it will take. Click on apply. And now let's test it. Our computer IP address right now is .100. So let's do ipconfig release and then ipconfig renew, and let's see what IP address we will be getting from pfSense. .90. That's exactly what we were expecting. Great. Alright guys, so pfSense is running. We have our LAN already working. We have DHCP server. We can now do static IP addresses for our devices, but let's do some port forwarding. In our drawing board, we have port forwarding we used to have on our last router, and we do want to migrate it into our pfSense. Again, I do not recommend using port forwarding, and I will not go over this process very thoroughly. I do have a video about port forwarding on pfSense. I will put a link to it in the top right corner, but just as an overview, briefly, if we want to assign port forwarding, we'll click on firewall and net. In the port forward tab, we'll select to create a new rule. Interface is WAN, IPv4, TCP, source, you don't need to touch it, keep it on any. In most cases, we will not know what IP address we will be coming from. Destination is a WAN address, and for example for Plex, it will be 32.400, 32.400. We need to redirect to a certain host, for example 192.168.1.90. Let's assume our computer is also running our Plex server, and redirect to 32.400. Description, always use descriptions just so you will be able to know what this port forwarding rule does. Click on save and apply, and just like that you have your first port forwarding rule. How easy was that? Guys, we have pfSense running. We are ready to install add-ons, but that's for later. pfSense is now running, serving our network perfectly. Now what we need to do is to grab our old access point we have lying around the house. I'm sure it's not uncommon that people have old wireless routers just lying in storage. I have 4 of them. Grab one of them, plug it into power, and hit the small reset button. Most of these devices have a small reset button you need to push with a paper clip or something for 10 or 30 seconds, and this will bring the device back to its factory defaults. We want to do it because we want this device to be configured with a static IP address and to be used as an access point and not as a router, and then we'll connect it like this to our switch. So every manufacturer has a different way to do it. I will show you on a TP-Link emulator, for example. The first thing that you'll need to do is go into Advanced, Network, LAN, and make sure to give your device a static IP address in the range of your LAN. For example, this cannot stay 0, it must be 1. And this cannot stay 1 because that will be the address of our pfSense firewall. So let's change it to 2. Click on save. Of course, I won't click on save because it's just an emulator. Go into DHCP server. If it's enabled, make sure it's disabled. We don't want 2 DHCP servers on our network. Only pfSense will do it. So unselect DHCP server and make sure to save. At this point, many of today's manufacturer from off-the-shelf devices has this kind of selection of operation mode, router or access point. When you select access point, it also shuts off some services like net and parental control and QoS. Select access point, click on save. Most likely the device will reboot itself. At this point you can grab the network cable that you have connected your computer to the access point and connect it from your computer to the switch. At this point the device will create a Wi-Fi network. Of course, sorry I skipped it. Configure your Wi-Fi as you see fit, with the name of the network and with a password, of course. That's goes without saying. Sorry I skipped it. At this point the device is an access point connected to our pfSense and broadcasting Wi-Fi network, and clients that are connecting to this Wi-Fi network will be brought to pfSense. pfSense will give them connectivity to the internet. So I guess it will take you around 30 minutes and you will have a robust network, not even comparable to the network that you used to use with ISP equipment, much more secure, getting updates, getting security features. You can install IPS add-ons. It's not the same leaks, not even the same sport. So guys, if you like this video, please give it a like. It will help me a lot to get this video to more people, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Bye everyone.